Thank you all so much for joining us for episode 9, season 4 of our Revise and Resubmit podcast. I'm Dr. Kim Bissell, the Southern Progress Endowed Professor in Magazine Journalism and the Associate Dean for Research in the College of Communication and Information Sciences at the University of Alabama.
And I'm Dr. Annalisa Boland, an Assistant Professor in the Department of Communication Studies, also at the University of Alabama, and we both work in the Institute for Communication and Information Research, or the ICIR, at UA. So one of the things that we've been able to see through this podcast, and we've seen a lot of things,
We have.
is that, okay, so I would say that 0 out of all of our guests as youngsters have thought, oh, I want to be a researcher, or, oh, I want to be a faculty member when I grew up. And some have indicated that they thought about like being a teacher or played school when they were younger, but exactly none have said that they wanted to be in higher education or academia as a career. Like maybe that unicorn is out there and we'll talk to them, but maybe not. And, I'm not even sure that any of our guests said like as a child, they wanted to earn a PhD or even a master's degree, maybe like not even go to college at all. But now, after each of our guests have earned those doctoral degrees, even if they find themselves not traditional faculty members, they are all still either actively doing research and or using research skills in their jobs.
That's exactly right. I don't know if once a researcher, always a researcher is a phrase, but I think it should be.
Mm-hmm.
Our guest today actually began her career playing golf in college and then became a pro golfer teaching golf. But when she moved to Alabama, she found out that it wasn't necessarily this thriving market. And so and is now the department chair of integrated marketing communication and of digital communications at the University of West Alabama. It's not even an hour down the road from where we are in Tuscaloosa.
Mm-hmm.
She has taught 13 different courses, and wait until you hear from her. You're going to hear how she is such a rock star.
And just as a fun fact, if you live in the West Alabama area and found yourself driving along the 2059 interstate between Birmingham and Tuscaloosa, you might just have seen her on a billboard that West Alabama posted to promote its distance learning programs. I mean, we're talking like superstar here.
Superstar.
Dr. Amy Jones was front and center of a billboard that thousands of people would pass each day, and her kids were horrified. And she tells us about that too.
We are so happy to welcome Dr. Amy Jones to the Revise and Resubmit podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today, Amy. We are thrilled to be able to catch up with you.
Hey, Dr. Bissell, it's great to talk to you. It's been a long time.
It certainly has. Amy, before we get started here, I have to ask you a question about a billboard that I remember seeing when I was driving from Birmingham down 2059. And I remember looking up and saying to myself, oh my goodness, that's Amy Jones on this billboard for UWA. And so I have to know, when your son saw it, what did they think? Or did they even know that that's like, oh, that's my mom on this huge billboard for West Alabama?
That is such a funny story. So our public relations and marketing office on campus for online programs that was putting up those billboards, they reached out and they were like, by the way, here's your new billboard. And I had no idea I was going to be on a billboard or that it was going to be there. And so they kind of let me know it wasn't like a permissions-based thing. It was like, hey, and here it is. And, hope you like it. And which was really funny because it was just completely unexpected. And so, yes, when we were driving to Tuscaloosa, the boys saw it, and I don't know how old they would have been at the time, maybe like 5 and 8. And the 5-year-old just really thought it was cool. And the 8-year-old was already embarrassed by me. So he was ready for my face to come off of that thing as quickly as possible.
And see, that's what I was wondering, where they're like, this is so cool. That's my mom. Or totally horrified that their friends might see it.
No, yeah, the younger one, who thinks everything is cool, thought it was great, and then the older one was like, "Oh my gosh, mom! Like my friends are all going to see that."
I think that would be pretty cool.
Anyway, it was great. It didn't last too terribly long, so they got over it.
So let's shift gears just a little bit and learn a little bit more about you. I'm going to ask you a couple quick questions. So first, can you tell us where you're from?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Shelbyville, Kentucky, and I lived there my whole life, all the way up through high school, and left there when I went to college.
Okay, and then when were you at the University of Alabama?
Okay, so let's see. That it kind of is a story on how I got there. I played golf in college and ended up at the University of New Orleans, and this natural disaster seems to follow me whatever university I attend. And so Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans kind of right at the end. I had just finished my eligibility. I was in my had just started my second semester of grad school at the University of New Orleans, and of course the university closed down. So I went back home to Louisville, and I finished the second half of my master's there. But I had been dating my husband in New Orleans, for like 4 or 5 years, and just suddenly Katrina kind of put us in this long distance relationship that frankly we just didn't want to be in. And so what two young dumb people do, they just like, let's get married. And so so we did. And he had just been hired as a grad assistant at UWA for the baseball team. And so we right after our wedding, I moved here, and starting at UWA as a professor was also kind of a random background, but they just happened to have an opening, and I happened to be qualified, but I didn't have a doctorate at the time. And so that was part of the deal is, hey, they'd try me out in the role as long as I'd agree to try to get a doctorate. And so that's how I ended up at the University of Alabama. But, natural disaster followed me there too, because the tornadoes struck Tuscaloosa right before my commencement ceremony for my doctorate program.
Wow.
I've forgotten that detail.
I know.
Goodness. So you are now where?
I am still at UWA, and I'm in my 16th year as a faculty member here now. So it's been a while, and I've pretty much served in every rank of faculty that you can serve in at UWA. So I started here as, a lecturer, and then moved up to instructor. And then once I finished my doctorate, went to tenure track line, and just recently got promoted to full professor this year.
Yay!
Yay!
Congratulations!
Thank you.
So, okay, we know that you were a golfer.
Yes.
Did the young Amy say from age 5 moving forward, I'm going to be a golfer? Is that kind of what you thought you would be growing up, or were there other things that you envisioned yourself doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I did my job before I moved to Livingston was I was a golf pro in Louisville, and I taught kids and women mostly lessons. But that really just was not a thing in the Black Belt region of Alabama. That is just not something that you can get a job for here. And so I still thought that's what I was going to be when I moved to Alabama. And it just didn't, really work out that way. But I think golf kind of prepared me for, when we go up for like tenure and things, we have to write these long essays about ourselves. And that's a terribly awkward thing to have to do. But my very first one that I wrote, I talked about how golf prepared me for pretty much, it prepares you for whatever. It just makes you constantly strive to be better, and you're competing against yourself and not other people. And, so like always kind of holding yourself accountable and trying to do better with whatever it is, kind of which each day trying to leave it better than you found it, which is kind of one of my mottos. And I don't know. So I feel like golf prepared me for that, but I definitely did not think I would be doing this. I always tell our students that they think they know exactly what they're going to do. Just remember, I thought I was going to be a golf pro until I moved here. So it's okay. I'm not at all doing that.
But I think that's a great lesson to share with your students about, you may go into something totally convinced this is going to be, your career forever and what you do for many, many, many years. But then, you shift gears for whatever reason, or maybe you're exposed to something via a class. And it's just, I think it's really cool that you can kind of share that story with them so that they can see they're not necessarily stuck in a particular path.
Yes, I think, it's all about the skills and kind of the lessons that you've learned leading up to your career, and not necessarily the specific career that you're working toward. And I think that's important to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
So let's get into some of the scholarship that you do and that you've done. Can you give us an elevator pitch on your research?
Sure. So I think really my main area of interest has always been kind of in sports comm. And I think that applies too with my teaching. My favorite classes that I get to teach are like sports photography, or, sports issues in the media, because it just kind of takes me back to, the days of getting to play a sport every day. And I don't get to do that much as a mom anymore. So a lot of my scholarship really kind of hits in that area of looking at, how the media represents different sports, what different stereotypes are out there, looking at verbal and visual cues within the media, and that sort of thing. But of course, at UWA, I have kind of more of an administrative role, and so I really think that my research and activities have kind of shifted here. I was our QEP director for our last QEP, and so that really took up a lot of my research activity. It was communications based, which was so it was like teaching our students about persona and audience, tone and style, and even media literacy. And of course, that went for 6 years, because we did a pilot year before it launched. And then, of course, I typed up that impact report as well. So that really takes up a lot of, just creative energy in that research headspace. And we do a lot of grant writing too. And we can have some fun with grants. Like just this past summer, when we were trying to come up with some fun activities to do grant wise, our department wrote one with an English professor here who does a lot of ghost novels. And so we wrote a ghost grant. We called it the ghost grant lovingly in our meetings, but that wasn't the actual title of the grant that we submitted. And, so it was just a lot of fun, like trying to work into maybe we could create a documentary and write this grant to do a ghost documentary with this really famous ghost author that we have on our English faculty here at UWA. So, doing some really cool stuff like that as well.
I want to be involved. But I guess it's not a class, but that sounds like really cool.
It really does.
So, yes.
Let me ask a question here. Is how did y'all get into that collaborative process and figure out like, crossing departments and working together? How did that come about?
We have just the best camaraderie in the building where I work over here at UWA. And so like our communications department is on the first floor, the English department's on the third floor. And, we just hang out and run ideas by each other. And one day we were just like, our ghost author, his name is Dr. Alan Brown, and he is just an absolute genius. But he was going to do a ghost tour around town for Halloween. And we were like, man, we've got to create a documentary for that, because that is just like, it sells out. Students have to like reserve their tickets, and they do several of them, and they all just, you can't ever get a spot, And we were thinking, we've got to do this. And then the grant office, somehow, I don't know, we were in a meeting with them and we were telling them how cool that was. And they said, oh my gosh, we could write a grant for that, So it just kind of turned into this whole thing, because we just sit around and collaborate sometimes and get creative. And I love that part of my day. There's generally an element in every day that is just, throwing out really fun ideas and what can we do, either involving our students or collaborating with different faculty or different areas on campus.
Okay. That is so, so cool. So I really have to ask, as you were telling us about how you got into academia, starting as a lecturer and moving kind of all the way up, you served in many different roles as a professor, and now you're on the administrative side. Was the administration piece of it something that you saw for yourself, like when you first started teaching, or did you think, I'll just always be a professor? Can you tell us a little bit more about how that happened? Because I know so many people in academia don't ever see themselves necessarily as administrators, and sometimes they're the best because it's like, well, I just kind of landed here and it's working out great.
Yeah, the same happened to me. I just landed here, and I think I just kept thinking I was going to be a golf pro. Like, it never really dawned on me where this thing was heading. But I knew I loved it, and I love our students. We really serve an awesome group of students, and have the whole time I've been here. And so I think that through coming in as a lecturer, you spend a lot of time with your students because your main role is to teach those classes and just to make sure that the students survive, and the same applies, I think, as all levels of faculty, but your roles change. You get put on more committees, you become busier, it pulls you away from the students when you do that. So I think that was, to have that student focus is really critical and kind of shaped maybe my mindset now, but I don't think I ever saw that it was going this way. When I first started working here, we really just had a journalism minor, and I don't even think we had maybe 20 students in the journalism minor. And so that was really, I taught 20 students, over and over again, in addition to the speech classes that I would teach, but the students that were in the program that I taught multiple courses in, I didn't have that many. And so, and I still am in touch with those students to this day because I just know everything about them, right? Because I spent so much time with that small cohort. It probably was more like 12 students. It was a very small cohort. And then 2 years after I finished my doctorate, so it would have been in 2013, we launched our integrated marketing and communications major. And it really just kind of exploded. And we have on campus and online now, I think just under 200 students now. So it really kind of exploded. But with that, we added 2 more undergraduate tracks and a graduate program. And so since 2013, there have been 4 new programs launched and different student interests coming and going. New faculty were hired to sustain the need for the number of students that we were getting. And we had to renovate facilities that we didn't have, and so it was really kind of a true building process, a labor of love, if that's what you want to call it. And so I don't know, it kind of just evolved into this, I think, because it was just something that we were building, but it was very much a group effort. The faculty in our program, there's another faculty member that has been here the whole time, right alongside of me. And so I think that we have all worked here for several years, and we're very invested into the process and kind of, doing what's best for our students and building something. So it's just kind of happened organically.
So I think that we've got all sorts of listeners, and of course a lot of academics, but a lot of undergrad and graduate students. And I think a lot of times we think, oh, I'm going to be a faculty member and I'm going to teach and I'm going to do research and that's it. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you got involved in like the QEP and what that even means? Because I think does every university have one?
They do, yes. So the QEP is a requirement for SAC COC reaccreditation. And you launch a new QEP every 10 years, and the QEP lasts for at least 6 years. Sometimes they keep going because it's essentially a project on your campus that you want to launch that will benefit something for the future for your students in general. So that can be the learning environment or something that you as a university feel that the students need to learn to make them better as a whole. And so it was around 9 years ago when our last one launched, because we're working on the second one as we speak. But that one was communication space because, the faculty and the students and the staff all just really felt like a collective voice was going, we really need help with communication. We want to make sure that when we read something online that we know how to tell whether it's a quality source or not. We want to understand how not to give rude tone in an email, but how to make sure that we can adjust our messages for different audiences and stuff like that. So that kind of just evolved into, hey, Amy, you teach communications. How about doing this? And so it just kind of became a part of what I did. And really, I enjoyed it. in a nerdy kind of way. I really did. It was a lot of fun. But I will tell you, around that same time, I was also faculty senate president. And I know. And that is what showed me, what it's like to be on a lot of meetings and what takes place at a university behind the scenes that's not just in the classroom, right? Because you're literally, as faculty senate president, you are the voice of the faculty. So you're on every committee. Just about.
Wow.
And so you really learn a lot. And again, the nerdy side of me was like, this is really neat to kind of understand how the university operates, what all these different offices do and what these different people do and how the different colleges interact with one another. And so so I think that role probably taught me more than anything.
I mean, it's cool. And well, I mean, I say it's cool not having done those things. I think these types of service and leadership experiences are a way that new faculty can learn more about the institution and get some of that professional development that's right there within the university too, which is a gift, I think.
Yes, it is. You learn a lot about making yourself better as a faculty member, but also just as someone who works for a university and serving that university's mission. And I think that it really shows you why your students are who they are, where they come from, and gives you that sense of compassion too for why you started doing what you're doing in the first place. So it really shows you another side, or kind of reminds you of why you are where you are.
So I want to shift gears back to kind of some of the classes that you have taught in the past, because it sounds like you've taught a lot of it.
Yes.
So in the area of sports media, I know you mentioned sports photography, which is definitely a favorite of mine to teach. But going back to the research that you did in sports communication, doing the research on representation and how the media are representing certain sports, some sports more than others. When you were teaching these classes, did you find like an overlap between what you had found in some of your studies and what you were telling them? And I know that as an athlete, you're probably able to like pull in the practical stuff as well. But did you find kind of a middle ground there where the research kind of collided with those classes?
Yes, and I think there was one of my very first articles that I ever had published was, you don't look like an athlete was the name of it. And the reason it was called that is because I can't tell you how many times in my life someone has said that to me, like, well, you don't look like a golfer, or you don't look like an athlete. And I always kind of tell those sports issues in the media class, I mean, that's really how it launches, is like, what does that even mean? What does a golfer look like? And and how do you know what that golfer looks like? And raise your hand if you've ever been to an LPGA event or a collegiate golf event in person, and hardly any of them ever have. And so then it's like, okay, so how do you know what I'm supposed to look like to be a golfer? And it kind of launches that conversation of, well, of course it comes from the media, and then, trying to see through the lens of how that event is edited and what camera angles are used and the commentary that's used and how that kind of shapes what we think about what a golfer is supposed to look like. So that's one of the first things that I do in those classes is just, normally when I tell them that I played golf in college, they're like, really? Because I'm just, like, I'm 5'4" on a good day. And, and I wear heels to make myself look more commanding, but I'm just not very physically commanding. And so I think that they're just always kind of like, are you sure, like that? And recently we have some international students on our campus all the time. And I took them to Topgolf in December for a fun day away from campus. And I'm just kind of give them a fun experience in American sport. That's, I think Topgolf is great. It's like bowling and darts and golf all in one. And so I took them, and they were like, oh, you mean you actually play golf? Like you? And I'm like, yes. So I still think they don't understand, because I just don't look the part. And that's really always opens that conversation of, you know, it's kind of like when a 5'5" guy walks in and they say they play basketball and you go, well,
Right.
you're a guard, you know, obviously, because that could be all you could ever be, because that's, you know, and I think that we just have these stereotypes.
You know, I think I'm thinking even like this topic and this questioning, I hope is also kind of enlightening to like what is a scientist and what is a researcher, especially right now. I think there's a look to what a scientist is supposed to look like, and then even further, like how they're supposed to act, as if every kind of job is one dimensional, or every sport or every athlete is just an athlete and can't do other things. And so this kind of inquiry into like what are your assumptions of someone, and like let's think about that more.
That's right. It really, and our students are so open to those discussions. And honestly, maybe that's a stereotype of my own, but I kind of felt like they wouldn't be. I felt like, you know, our students would be closed off to, you know, just exploring. Maybe my perception of things isn't exactly the way it is in reality. Maybe if I go to an event in person, I might be surprised. And I mean, I can say this, and my collegiate soccer players hopefully won't be upset with this, but I always kind of thought soccer was boring to watch, you know. I'm not gonna lie, but then when I go to our college soccer matches, like they are fascinating, like they're really fun. And so it's like, well, why is it that it's boring on television for me, and then I've got this perception of how boring this is, but then in person I love it, right? And so what is it that we're doing with our media representation of that makes me feel a certain way until I've been there in person?
So many, we could have 29,000 follow-up questions. I love that. But I do want to shift gears on you just a little bit again. I know when you were at the University of Alabama, you had an opportunity to also be here when Dr. Jennings Bryant was here. And I was wondering if you had a great Jennings story, or if you took a class from him and you wanted to share a little bit about maybe your interactions with him.
You know, and I don't think I ever had the privilege of taking a class from him, but that did not mean that we did not interact, because I think that he saw himself as like the grandpa of our doctoral program, and kind of took us all under his wing. And so, you know, I'm just smiling, you know, when you bring up his name, because I just feel like just such an awesome person representing, I think, the service that we give undergraduate students is that hand holding and that, you know, personalized individual love that you give each student, that encouragement. And that's what he brought to that program, is just like, hey, you've got this. It was just a very grandpa loving kind of a situation, was my perception of him through our interactions.
Yeah,
that is so true. I mean, I think many of our previous guests have said he's sort of the academic dad or academic grandpa, doing exactly as you described. And I think he would be thrilled to know everyone saw him in that way.
That's right. That's right. I mean, there's no better legacy than that. Just to know that you were the person that encouraged people that they could make it through. You know?
Right. Absolutely.
So, Amy, looking back, not that you're finished, but looking back over the past 16 years or so in your professional career, what are you most proud of?
Oh gosh. You know, it might sound cliche. I think I'm most proud of our students. You know, you get very close to them. We see how much they grow. We stay in touch. They have my cell number. We stay in touch on a closed Facebook group. And so I constantly know where they are when they change jobs, you know, they're having babies. It's just, honestly, that has been, I think, probably the most rewarding thing for me. But I will say that COVID probably brought the greatest challenges to that too, because it really, the interaction, my office is actually in an electrical closet, which is great. And and it opens up into the classroom. And so when my office door is open, which it is if I'm in here generally, I mean, I hear every class that takes place outside of my office door because it literally opens up into the classroom.
Oh
And
my
so
goodness.
I know. So I am with these students all day. So social distancing is like, it's not a thing. I mean, it's just like we are in one another's space all day, every day. And so to try to navigate, how do we do this safely? How do we still have interaction that I think that is really important to what our program has become, was a huge challenge. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and say that we're on the other side of this thing now. I'm going to declare that a win, but it was a huge challenge of how do we social distance but still work in groups? How do we navigate when students are quarantined for 2 weeks, but class still has to go on, and how do we do this asynchronously and synchronously, and still run our program in a way that a student would want to be a part of it, And so I think that I think I'm proud of how we survived that, because it was a unique challenge that, I mean, nobody could ever prepare you for that.
Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So shifting gears again, I have a final question, and truly I feel like we could talk for a whole other hour. But one final question, and it's a follow-up to what you just said about the lockdown and navigating all of that. I know, I wouldn't say I stalk you on social media. I follow you on social media. So I know there was a good period of time where you were posting day whatever it was in quarantine with your son.
Yes.
Which was great, and provided, I don't want to say entertainment, but I was like those sweet boys stuck again on day 100 and whatever it was. So following up on this optimism and hope that you just shared, is there a place that you're looking forward to going, if whether it's professional or personal, a conference that you want to attend, a place that you want to go with your family when we are finally out of all this?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so much. But to go back to that, we started on day 1 of quarantine, and for whatever reason, I was just like, every day I'm going to post something that I want to remember with this time that I get to have with my kids, because that's just so special to me, to get time with them. And this was, you couldn't have predicted the amount of time we got. It just kept going. And so I wanted to just every day, if we can just find one thing that I want to remember. But the really cool thing is I was posting it to my Instagram, and then I found this app called Chat Books. I swear I'm not advertising for them, but and it created these books of what I posted every day. And so we have them as coffee table books at our house. And it actually took up
goodness.
It took up 3 books because there's so many. I mean, that's how long we were together before, and it just went on and on. I can't even remember, like 180 something days. And so it makes up 3 books, and you can flip through and see what we did every single day and what we were able to do together. And it really, I was so thrilled that I found that app, and that just was so fortunate that on day 1 we started posting whatever fun thing we got to do together. And I'm going to have to get extra copies because I know they're going to want them one day. I think they'll want to remember that too. It was certainly memorable. As far as going places with the family, I guess that's the one thing we never stopped doing. But it really did affect us kind of at work. We always take our students to go do some fun things. We take an annual trip to Disney World. We weren't able to do that last year. We haven't really been able to go to conferences with our students, and we've really missed that. But we are going to Disney World this year. We're leaving in a week and a half. And and most of our students that we take, they've never been. It is so much fun. And then I have a conference coming up in April, which is a work-based learning conference. And I know that's the nerdy side of me, but I really love kind of helping teach our students how to go from the hands-on skills that they're learning, but how does that apply to the workforce, and how can they apply those skills to pretty much anything they want to do. And so I am looking forward to going to that conference in Birmingham. It is this time. So
much to look forward to.
Yes.
I love it. Amy, it has been so much fun catching up with you. I can't thank you enough for taking some time to talk to us and share all of these great stories. I have thoroughly enjoyed it.
Oh, I have too. It's been great catching up.
All right. Bye, Amy.
Thanks, Amy.
Bye. Thank you.